There's hydrogen and helium, then lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon everywhere, nitrogen all through the air, with oxygen so you can breathe, and fluorine for your pretty teeth, neon to light up the sign, sodium for salty times.
Good morning and welcome back to science class. Okay, I hope you watched the videos that I sent out yesterday, because what we talk about today is going to build on what we had yesterday. That's sort of what science does. You start out with a little bit of information, and then you put on more and more and more and more and more, and it gets bigger and bigger like that. Okay? Yesterday, Dr. Binox told you about something called the water cycle. That's when water is on the ground, goes up into the air, and then comes back to the ground again, in a circle. He said that the sun causes water to evaporate into the air, and then it comes down to the ground in the form of rain and other types of things that fall from the sky. We're going to talk about what that's called in just a minute here. Okay, but how do you know that there's water in the air? Well, this is stuff is on pages, let me see here, pages 158 and 159 of your book, of the page that I gave you. How can you see the water in the air? If you look outside your window, look at the air, you can't really see the water in it. Now, there's a lot of water in the air, especially here, because we live so close to the beach. But why can't you see the water in the air? Well, the answer to that is because it's too warm. It's too warm. Warm air collects water, and it spreads it out. Again, do you remember that little computer model I showed you of water? When the water was ice, all the molecules were stayed together. When the water was water, they were all mixed up. And when the water was steam, the molecules spread out. Well, warm air is full of water, but there it's all spread out. You can't see it. If you wanted to see the water in the air, here's what you can do. Go get a glass of water from the sink or whatever, or your bottle of drinking water, and put some ice in it. Take that ice, that glass full of water, and just leave it on the counter for a while. And sooner or later, you'll start to see that the outside of the glass gets wet. You ever seen that before? The outside of the glass gets wet. That's because the cold in the glass is mixing with the warm air outside of it. And as it does, that cold pulls that water in the air together. And it comes together on the outside of your cold drinking glass. There's a word for that, and that word is condensation. Condensation. When cold air makes the water and warm air come together. It's called condensation. Clouds are a type of condensation. The warm air that's full of water goes up to where there's cold air, and the cold makes the water come together in clouds. That makes clouds. Clouds, like we said, are full of cold water, frozen water, and they're also full of dust. We really talk about that when we talk about clouds. And that's very important, because the water, just by itself, it can't do anything. It has to come and form around something. There has to be something that forms around it. The air is not only full of water, it's also full of dust, full of polvo. So you have that little bit of dust, and it goes in, it gets cold, and the water comes and forms around it. And what do you get when that happens? Well, you get clouds. What else do you get? You get rain. You get rain. as those clouds, they collect more and more water and more dust. Clouds get bigger and bigger and bigger, but they also get heavier. As they get heavier, they're pulling all that stuff in. And as clouds get heavier, they come lower and lower and lower and lower until they meet that warm air that's coming up, and the clouds basically start to melt. The water becomes too heavy to stay up in the cloud, and it falls down to the ground. That's where rain comes from. That's how you get rain. The water goes up into the sky, and it stays there until it gets too heavy, and it comes down back to the ground again. It comes down in rain or snow or other types of water that fall from the ground. And we have a nice big word for that one too. That's called precipitation. Precipitation. That's when water falls out of the sky. Okay? Rain is a type of precipitation. So is snow. So is fog. Fog is a type of precipitation. It's also a type of condensation. Now sometimes, here's another type of condensation. Sometimes you may have seen this, and not too often around here because it doesn't really get cold enough. But sometimes you may go out and you're outside in the morning and you notice that the ground is wet. The ground is wet. But it didn't rain last night. Why is that? Well, that's another type of condensation. The cold air of the night pulled all the water out of the warm air, and it came and collected onto the ground, onto the plants and the other things around there. The word for that is a nice short one this time. Dew. Dew. The Bible talks a lot about the morning dew. You guys know the story of Noah? When God sent rain to the earth for the first time? Well, before that, the way that God watered the plants all around the world was with dew. It never rained before Noah. But the plants need water, and so God used the morning dew to water the earth. But if you ever go outside and see it's wet outside, but it didn't rain last night, that's why. Because of the dew. The cold of the night pulled the water out of the warm air and brought it together onto the plants or whatever else is outside. And that's called the dew. Okay? These are the ways that the water that is in the air comes back down to earth. The first one, which our first question is about, is what is water vapor coming together called? The water vapor, water in the air coming together is called condensation.
Previously on condensation.
Ellen, there's moisture on the outside of my glass.
It's condensation, Johnny.
But what about the fog on the windows?
It's not fog, Johnny. It, too, is called condensation.
Condensation.
There, now you can remember it easier. The second way that water comes to earth is by falling out of the sky. And the water falling to earth it's not called rain, it's called precipitation, which is rain is a type of precipitation. So is snow, so is hail, which we'll talk about another time. And question number 3, the other way that the water comes onto the ground is what? Question 3, what is the water found on the ground in the morning called? And that is dew. Dew. Okay? All right. I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, but I think you can handle it. Tomorrow we have a test, which is some matching up with terms. And if you've been doing your questions, watching these videos, then you will know the answers to them without any problem at all. Okay? All right, well, that's all we have today. I will see you tomorrow for your test.